I've been making light stands for my plants for almost 50 years. During that time, I made a lot of mistakes and I've learned an awful lot. By incorporating all this knowledge into this final stand, which I've just completed, I'm going to save you hundreds of frustrating hours fighting with the wrong design. And I'm going to save you a bunch of money. This is a very inexpensive design that anybody can build. It's also suitable for any kind of lights. The first thing to think about is the size of the light stand. How big do you really want it? Now I see a lot of videos online that show you how to make these dinky little things, 2 or 3 feet wide. Well, if you're a plant person, you're going to run out of room so fast that you're going to wish you had made it bigger. Now this stand here is 8 feet long. In North America, that's a standard size for lumber. And so you might as well make it 8 feet long. If you don't have that space, you can go shorter. And if you go 4 feet, just cut everything in half. But 8 feet works great. And as you can see, I had no problem filling this with plants. An 8-foot light stand also works well for different kinds of lights. So here I'm using the newer LED lights, and I've done a review of these in another video. But a lot of you will want to use the less expensive shop lights. Well, they come in standard 4-foot lengths. If you have an 8-foot bed, you just buy 2 of those end to end, and you've covered the whole area. How about the depth? To some extent, that depends on the size of your arms. You don't want to make it any wider than you can easily reach the back. But the width is also determined by the type of light you use. These newer LED lights tend to be square, so they fit well in a space that's deeper. If you're using shop lights, you might want to make the bench a little narrower. The shop lights aren't very wide, and so they don't cover as wide of an area. And in fact, if you make the bench 2 feet wide and run 2 shop lights this way, you'll get lots of light into that 2-foot area. If you make it wider than that, the outsides just won't get enough light to grow good plants. The basic construction is pretty simple. These are 2x4s. The cross piece is there, 2 screws in there, and you've got your corner done. For the base, I use a 1/2-inch plywood. Plywood is better than any kind of particle board material. If particle board gets wet, it will warp and fall apart eventually. Plywood is generally made with waterproof glue. It's real wood, and if it gets wet a little bit, it won't warp nearly so badly. So go with the plywood. When you water your plant, you're going to get some water inside of this wood. For the 2x4s, I'm not too worried. They can get wet and they'll just dry out again. You don't need pressure-treated wood here. But it is a problem for the plywood because the water will sit at the bottom for a longer period of time. So what I do is I line the whole thing with a thick piece of plastic. Go to the hardware store and ask for the thicker vapor barrier. This is really good plastic, pretty hard to poke holes in it with plants. I cut a large piece that's a little larger than my bed, lay it in, fold over the corner so it looks a little neater, and then staple it in place. I'm going to leave the plastic down the front like this and also staple it underneath and give me a nice finish. I now have a waterproof bed, and that's really nice. I don't have to use trays. I don't have to use larger outer pots. Just take your standard pot and put it in here. You can water it. Any excess water will run through the pot and be retained by the plastic. One of the problems you do have is that when you water your plants, you want to put in a little excess water and let it run through the pot so you wash out some of the salts. That means you have water sitting in here. Many plants don't like to sit in that water. And these are streptocarpus. They definitely don't like to sit in the water. So you have to raise these up a little bit. The easiest way to do that is to use this egg crate material. This is normally used as a covering on fluorescent lights that are in the ceiling, but it works great in your plant room. Just cut it to size and lay it in here. It's just loose. The weight of the pots will keep it in place. Here's a neat little trick that I learned, and it's especially useful when you're using shop lights or LED lights that don't have really high power. We want to maximize the amount of light hitting the plants, but a lot of the light from your lights is going sideways. So you want some sort of reflector here. Something white works really well. Any kind of white plastic works. An old shower curtain, or what I'm using here is some old window blinds that I bought at a secondhand store. It's a good strong plastic. It's very white. It's got a good reflective quality. A bonus feature of this is that it's also waterproof. So any water that gets sprayed on your plants and hits the wall will run down the sheet and into the trough. So you'll get no damage to the house. One of the things that I found over the years with these benches is that the leaves tend to grow over top of them. So this little plant here is sitting here. It likes to grow over top of the edge. The leaves are bigger than the tray. That's a real problem when we go this way because it's up against the wall. So what I've done on this plant tray is I've added an extra shelf here. The plant tray itself ends here, and I've taken another 2x4 and put it sideways. So I've added 3.5 inches here. Now when the leaves from the plant grow over, they have some space. Now granted, they might like more space, and you could make this wider, but I think this will work for most of my plants. The plant shelf sits in the corner, and so 2 sides of it are nailed directly to the wall. That gives me a really good support. It does leave the front corner weak. I could support that with another 2x4 running vertically, but I've decided to put on a wire instead, and you'll see why in a second. Simply put in a little eye hook and a wire and wire it to the ceiling. The whole bench is now very stable. Now comes one of the best parts of this design. I built a lower bench exactly the same as the upper bench, except I didn't mount it to the wall. The problem with them mounted to the wall is it's very hard to get in here to try and maintain your plant. You have to bend way over and reach to the back. That's too much work, and there's a much better way of doing that. Instead of mounting it to the wall, I gave it some legs. And now when I want to work on my plants, I just simply roll it out and I have easy access to my plants. And when I'm finished, I simply roll it back under the lights. For the legs, I just used some 2x6 lumber and attached some legs at the bottom. This roll-out bench works really well with shop light. Again, those shop lights have a very low intensity of light, and so you have to have your plants close to the lights. That gives you very little room to work in here. By using a roller bench, you have all the room you want to take care of your plants. Now that you have the best grow light stand, it's time to do something about those lights. And I recommend going with LEDs, and there's a number of different options. I reviewed those and I select the best LED for your application in this video right here.